Salam Islam. Praise Allah. Honors Prophet. High honors each and every one of you. Praise Allah, Father of the universe, Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, justice. Allah is our protector, our guide, and our salvation, my night and my day, through our holy prophet, Ali. Amen. Hey, praise Allah, y'all. Happy Monday. It's April 27th, 2026. Praise be to Allah. Happy Monday. Back. Make a video. You know, my dog is doing well. Praise Allah. She recovering well. Her arm, her leg healing up, you know, the area. Praise be to Allah. And this your first time here. What I do is I read a chapter from the Holy Quran of More Science of America, divinely prepared by no prophet Ali, by God and his Father, God Allah, great God of the universe, to redeem man from his sinful and fallen stage of man back to highest plane of life with his Father, God Allah. And then after I read the chapter in its entirety, I get my understanding on it. And my understanding is my understanding, you know, praise be to Allah. It's not the understanding of More Science of America. It's not the understanding of any other members. It's strictly my understanding as I understand the Holy Quran of More Science of America through my own studies of the Holy Quran of More Science of America, my studies of the Great Quran of Muhammad, my studies of the Old Testament, my studies of the teachings of Buddha and Confucius, and how I all see, you know, coming together. You know, praise be to Allah. So before I get started, you know, I'd like to show who the Prophet of Ali is, founder of More Science of America, Moorish American, divinely prepared by Allah. And also like to show Sultan Abdul Aziz ibn Saud, who at this time, because this pamphlet came out in 1927, he was the head of the holy city of Mecca. You know, and that last name, Saud, S-A-U-D, indeed, Saudi Arabia. So his family is still ruling in Saudi Arabia. Praise be to Allah. Honors to the Muslims over there. Honors to all the Muslims around the world. Prophet is teaching us our religion. Praise be to Allah, Islamism. And he's teaching us how to uplift fallen humanity through the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. So today we'll be reading from the Divine Instruction of Holy Prophet, chapter 11, Jesus and Barata. Together they read the sacred books. Excuse me. Among the Buddhist priests was one who saw lofty wisdom in the words that Jesus spoke. It was Barata of Rabo. Together Jesus and Barata read the Jewish songs and prophets, read the Vedas, the Avesta, and the wisdom of Gautama. And as they read and talked about the possibilities of man, Barata said, "Man is the marvel of the universe. He is part of everything, for he has been a living thing on every plane of life. Time was when man was not, and then he was a bit of formless substance in the molds of time, and then a protoplasm. By universal law, all things tend upward to a state of perfectedness. The protoplasm evolved, becoming a worm, then reptile, bird, and beast, and then at last reached the form of man. Now, man himself is mind, and mind is here to gain perfection by experience. And mind is often manifest in fleshy form, and in form best suited to its growth. So mind may manifest as worm, or bird, or beast, or man. The time will come when everything of life will be evolved onto the state of perfect man. And after man is man in his perfectedness, he'll evolve to higher forms of life." And Jesus said, "Barata Rabo, who told you this? That mind which is man may manifest in flesh of beast or bird or creeping thing." Barata said, "From time which man remembers not, our priests have told us so, and so we know." And Jesus said, "Enlighten Rabo, are you mastermind and do not know that man knows naught by being told? Man may believe what others say, but thus he never knows. If man would know, he must himself be what he knows. Do you remember a rainbow when you were ape, a bird, a worm? Now, if you have not better proven of your plea than that the priests have told you so, you not know, you simply guess. Regard not then what any man has said. Let's forget the flesh and go of mind into the land of fleshless things. Mind never does forget. And backward through the ages, masterminds can trace themselves, and thus they know. Time never was when man was not. That which begins will have an end. If man was not, the time will come when he will not exist. From Allah's own record book we read, the tree of Allah bring forth, and stood 7 spirits for his face. The Hebrews call these 7 spirits Elohim, and these are they who, in their boundless power, create everything that is or was. These spirits of the tree of Allah moved on the face of boundless space, and 7 others were, and every other had its form of life. These forms of life were but the thought of Allah, clothed in the substance of the ether planes. Men call these ether planes the planes of protoplasm, of earth, of plant, of beast, of man, of angel, and cherubim. These planes, with all their timid thoughts of Allah, are never seen by eyes of man and flesh. They are composed of substance far too fine for fleshy eyes to see. And still they constitute the soul of things. And with the eyes of soul, all creatures see these ether planes and all the forms of life. Because all forms of life on every plane are thoughts of Allah. All creatures think, and every creature is possessed of will, in its measure has the power to choose. And in their native planes, all creatures supply nourishment from the ethers of the planes. And so it was with every living thing until the will became a sluggish will. Then the ethers of the protoplasm, the earth, the plant, the beast, the man, began to vibrate slower still. The ethers became more dense, and all the creatures of these planes were clothed with coarser garbs of flesh, which men can see, and thus the coarser manifest, which men call physical, appeared. And this is what is called the fall of man. But man fell not alone, for protoplasm and earth and plant and beast were all included in the fall. The angels and the cherubim fell not, their will were never strong, and so they held the ethers of the plane in harmony with Allah. Now, when the ether reached the rate of atmosphere, and all the creatures of these planes must get their food from atmosphere, the conflict came. Then that which the finite man called survival the best became a law. The stronger ate the bodies of the weaker manifest, and here's where the carnal evolution had its rise. And now man, it is utter shamelessness, strikes down and eats the beast consumes the plant thrives on the earth absorbs protoplasm. And yonder kingdom of the soul, this carnal evolution is not known. And the great work of masterminds to restore the heritage of man to bring him back to his estate that he had lost, when he again will live upon the ethers of his native plane. The thoughts of Allah changed not. The manifest of life on every plane unfolds in the perfection of the kind, and as the thought of Allah can never die, there is not death to any being of the 7 ethers of the 7 spirits of the Trinity of Allah. And so on earth is never a plant, a beast, a bird, a creeping thing is never man, and man is not and cannot be a beast, or bird, or creeping thing. The time will come when all these manifests will be absorbed, and man and beast and plant and earth and protoplasm will be redeemed. Barata was amazed. The wisdom of the Jewish sage was revelation unto him. Now Vyapati, wisest of the Indian sages, chief of the temple Kapavistu, heard Barata speak to Jesus of the origin of man, and heard the answer of the Hebrew prophet, and he said, "You priests of Kapavistu, hear me speak. We stand today upon the crest of time. 6 times ago, a master soul was born who gave a glorious light to man, and now a master sage stands in the temple of Kapavistu. The Hebrew prophet is the rising star of wisdom, defied. He brings to us a knowledge of the secret things of Allah, and all the world will hear his word and glorify his name. You priests of temple Kapavistu, stay, be still and listen when he speaks. He's a living oracle of Allah. And all the priests gave thanks and praised the Buddha of enlightenment. Praise be to Allah. Again, now it's chapter 11, Jesus Barata. Together they read the sacred books. Now let's get right into it. Islam. Praise Allah. The title of the chapter, Jesus and Barata. Together they read the sacred books. So this tells us that Jesus and Barata, they were studying. And again, this is when Jesus was in India, when he was a youth, between the ages of 12 to about, hard to say, how long he stayed in India, but from 12 to about maybe 18 or older, who knows, to be honest. But he definitely was, in between that range, 12 to 18 during here. So a young man, imagine, just like going through high school, or, you go through middle school, high school, go to college, you end up graduating from college about what, 21, 22. Praise be to Allah. So kind of that's, Jesus is learning here. So it says, among the Buddhist priests was one who saw lofty wisdom words that Jesus spoke. It was Barata. So Barata was a Buddhist priest, and he saw lofty wisdom in the words that Jesus spoke. So he heard Jesus spoke, and he said, hey, Jesus got some wisdom about him, He saw lofty wisdom. So he was appreciative of Jesus's wisdom. And another thing that sticks out here says he was a Buddhist priest. The previous chapter, it said Jesus spake on the unity of Allah and man to the Hindus. So Jesus was speaking to Hindus, Buddhists. He's speaking to a varied crowd. He just wasn't speaking to one type of religious group per se. He was speaking to a lot of different people, with different religious perspectives. And he was talking to Buddhist priests. Said, together Jesus and Barata read the Jewish Psalms and Prophets, read the Vedas, the Avesta, and the wisdom of Gautama. Now, sticks out here, read the Jewish Psalms and Prophets. So they were reading about Jesus's people, the Psalms was written by King David. He is divinely inspired by Allah, and he wrote down the Psalms, that Allah gave him. And that's one of Jesus's great fathers. So that alone, and then the prophets, the Israelites, they all related along the way. And a lot of prophets, were Israelites, etc. Some wasn't, but so there they was reading something that Jesus was a little bit familiar with. And he said to read the Vedas. Now, Vedas, I believe, are the Hindus like Bible, for lack of better words. If I'm wrong, somebody leave a comment, let me know what the Vedas are. I'll end up looking that up after this video. Then it said he read the Avesta. Now the Avesta, I believe, is the book of the Zoroastrianism. So it's like a Persian book, like the Persian Bible, from Zoroaster, the prophet Zoroaster, if you're familiar with him. And it says in the wisdom of Gautama. Who's Gautama? Talking about Sarhama Gautama. That was the first Buddha. So read the wisdom of Gautama. So that's one of my divine prophets. My divine prophets are Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, and Confucius, and Noble Drew Ali. And who is Buddha? Buddha is Sarhama Gautama. So Jesus was reading about the previous divine prophet here. As they read and talked about the possibilities of man, Barata said, man is a marvel of the universe. He is part of everything, for he has been a living thing on every plane. Now, Barata was just giving his thoughts here. Said man is the marvel of the universe. I do agree with that. We are the marvel of the universe underneath Allah. He's a part of everything. We are part of everything on this planet Earth, in regards to our thoughts and our ability to influence things. We can influence pretty much everything on this earth. But then he said, for he has been a living thing on every plane of life, and that's kind of where kind of gets lost, like, as we'll continue on reading. Time was when man was not, and then he was a bit of formless substance in the molds of time, and then a protoplast. So Barata's saying, time was already existing before man, and then he's like some formless substance. So, that kind of throws me a little bit. And then a protoplast, and a protoplast is like almost like cellular level things, like small single level cells, single cell organisms, super small things like microscopic. Then he said, by universal law, all things tend upward to a state of perfectness. The protoplast evolved, becoming worm, then reptile, bird, and beast, then last reached the form of man. So what Barata was saying is we started as a protoplast, and then we became a worm, and then a reptile, then a bird, and then a beast, then at last reached the form of man. Now, Barata is not too far from what a lot of modern scientists believe in terms of evolution, and you'll see some people say, oh, this is all of our common ancestor, and it's like a reptile-looking thing, So some people, hold that thought. And as we continue on, we'll read a little bit more. He says, now man himself is mind, and mind is here to gain perfection by experience. Now man himself is not only the mind, we are a lot more than a mind. We got a soul, we got a spirit. We spirit man, a part of Allah. And then he says, the mind is here to gain perfection by experience. Now that's pretty on point. You think about when you use your mind and when you learn, you do gain perfection by experience. When you study, that's experience. When you do something, write code or practice your technique in boxing or anything, that's gaining perfection by experience. Think about when you had to learn how to write, spell your ABCs, how to write. Every time you wrote, you got a little bit better. You were gaining perfection by experience. So that's on point. And he said, mind is often manifest in fleshy form, and in form best suited to its growth. So mind may manifest as worm or bird or beast or man. So he's trying to, say mind is man. Man himself is mind. And that mind manifests in fleshy form, in the form best suited to its growth. And, I think, that we manifest in the form as a whole being that best suit our growth. Like we spoke about, like I spoke to y'all about in previous videos, we find ourselves where we can solve our problems best, And that's what Jesus was taught too before this, So he already had that understanding. Barata or Raybo didn't yet. So Barata continues on and he says, time will come when everything of life will be evolved onto the state of perfect man. So in Barato's theory, there will be no other living things besides man and, the trees maybe, and plants and flowers. Because according to Barata Raybo here, everything would evolve to being a perfect man. So there'd be no more birds, no more beasts, no more worms, no more fish in the sea, So you kind of see how that kind of like falls apart. And then he continues on. He says, after man is man in perfectness, he will evolve to higher forms of life. And that's where he kind of stops. And Jesus said, Barata Raybo, who told you this? That man may manifest in flesh a beast or bird or creeping thing. So Jesus asking him, who told you this? Barata said, from time which man remembers not, our priests have told us so, and so we know. So he kind of said, somebody told me. That's pretty much what he said. And Jesus said, in light of Raybo, are you a mastermind? Do not know that man knows not by being told? So that's not by being told. Somebody could tell you something, but that don't mean it's true. Like I say, what I say, like I could tell you something might not necessarily mean it's true. in like your life, or it just, knows not by being told. You can't like just rely on what somebody tells you. Like, you have to actually do it. So Jesus continues on. He says, man may believe what others say, but thus he never knows. If man would know, he must himself be what he knows. It's like if somebody gave you all the answers to the test, like, and you didn't study, and it's like 10 minutes before the test, and they gave you all the answers to the test, you might have a good memory. You might remember all of them, who knows? But the average person there, they might only remember like 50% of it. End up only getting a 50% on the test. That's an F. They flunked. And because they didn't really be it. They heard it, but they weren't actually being it. They weren't imprinting it into their mind. The understanding, like, okay, I know why that equals that. Like, it's a way, you could be told something, but until you actually do it, you don't really comprehend it all the way through. Like, you could study how to, like, throw a punch. Like, somebody could tell you it has to be like this, but until you actually do it and feel it, being what's described as, you really don't know. And that's what Jesus kind of letting Barata know here. Said man may believe what others say, but thus he never knows. Man will know, he must himself be what he knows. Like, somebody tells you, oh, this works. You're like, okay, it might work, but until you do it, what they telling you works, you won't know or not. And prophet says, regard not then what any man. No, he said, my bad. He said, do you remember, Rabo, when you were ape or bird or worm? Now, that's a simple question. Do you remember when you were ape or bird or worm? I don't remember ever being no ape. I don't ever remember being no bird. I don't ever remember being no worm, ever. Like, in none of my dreams, I never dreamed where I was an ape. Never dreamed where I was a bird. I never dreamed where I was a worm. None of these things. If you have, maybe, then so be it, but me personally, I never remember. So, like, if Jesus said, do you remember, Jalen, when you were ape or bird or worm? No, I don't, Jesus. And he said, now, if you have not better proven than your pleading that the priest have told you so, you not know, you simply guess. And that's kind of like here. I'm telling you all this out the Holy Crown of More Science to America in this video, right? But, like, look, I'm reading this to you. Like, until you go ahead and get the Holy Crown of More Science to America, I'm just reading this to you. That's like, priest have told you so. You not know, you simply guess. So I call on everybody to get a copy of the Holy Crown of More Science to America and read it yourself and get you a good understanding of what's going on. Apply it to your inner workings and your inner life and everything that you done learned about in your life. See how it applies to you. And, we said, if you had not better proven than you pleading that priest have told you so, you not know, you simply guess. So again, like in our life, when we go to tell somebody something, we should have proof that we done did it. Like, and we know, like, the results. Like me, like, I had a program I did to get my leg muscles bigger, and it worked. So I know I could get that program to anybody, and I got good evidence, my own self, that it will work for you. If you do these reps, like I say here, and you make sure you eat what you're supposed to eat, it's going to work for you. I didn't just write this up and never try it myself, and that's what the prophet is letting us know. He said, regard not then what any man has said. Let us forget the flesh and go with mind into the land of fleshless things. Mind never does forget. So the prophet said, Don't worry about what other men have been saying. Go find out for yourself. So he calls on us. Let's forget the flesh and go with mind into the land of fleshless things. Mind never does forget. So he calling us on us to use the power of meditation. And if you got understanding who Buddha was, Buddha meditated underneath a tree. And when he was meditating, that was how he realized how to become one with Allah. Through meditation and living the life of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And he forgot the flesh. When you meditate, you don't think about the flesh. You try your best to not think about it. You try your best to forget about it. You get your breath down, and that's all you think about, in your nose, out. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. That's how you meditate. That's the main thing to focus on when you meditate. Or some people, you could do either or, you could, as long as you breathe in directly through your nose, you could blow out through your lips, or you could just and blow out through your nose. And close your eyes. Some people meditate with their eyes open, depending on your skill level. And that's what you put your mind on. And that's how you end up forgetting the flesh. You'll get fleshly sensations. Your skin might itch. Your eye might twitch. But as long as you keep on returning back to your breath, it will calm you. And it will help you forget, the flesh. You can use that for various things. If you're feeling some pain, you can meditate, help manage that pain in your flesh. Prophet said, mind never does forget. So he lets us know, our mind, the powers of the soul help do that. He said, backward through the ages, masterminds can trace themselves, and thus they know. So masterminds can trace themselves. You could trace your past lives once you become a mastermind. You could say, oh, I was this person. Oh, I was that person. Oh, I was this person. Able to trace yourself. I'm not able to do that yet. Skill I've been working on. And as I continue on, I know it's something I'm going to be able to do. Praise be Allah. Prophet says time never was when man was not. And that makes sense because if I go ask my dog, what time is it? It's going to look at me like, I don't know. Like, think about like anybody that got pets. Your animal don't care about daylight savings. When that daylight savings come, if they eat at 6 a.m. and the clock says 7 a.m. now, or the clock says 5 a.m., because of daylight savings, they going to be expecting that food at that point. They ain't paying attention to no time. And even before, we got on the, if you go according to the Old Testament and Allah created us last, and even in the Holy Crown of More Science to America, we're told Allah created us last. Later on, it's a chapter 36, Holy Instruction of Prophet, Know Thyself. Prophet said, Allah from thee is he from these. After them, onward thou created. And he's talking about the animals. So we were created after the animals. So while all the animals were here on the earth, wasn't no clocks on the wall. Wasn't nobody keeping track of time. They just went on their day. They looked at the sun. The sun is up. Okay, I'm active. Or if they nocturnal, sun is up, I'm sleeping. Simple as that. They wasn't saying, oh, it's 12 p.m. It's 1 p.m. No, they wasn't doing that. Time never was when man was not. That which begins will have an end. If man was not, the time will come when he will not exist. So Prophet letting us know that which begins will have an end. Our lives have a beginning on this earth plane, so they're going to have an end. But that's not the end of us, because as the Prophet said, we could trace ourselves before this life right here that we even in. Prophet said, from Allah's own record book you read, the tree of Allah breathed forth and stood 7 spirits for his face. The Hebrews call these 7 spirits Elohim. Now there's some people who get this a little twisted, right? Thinking that Allah is Elohim. Now, in my understanding, using logic, Allah is not Elohim. Now, reason I say that, says the tree of Allah breathed forth. That should explain it all right there. Now, if you want to take it to human, okay, right? I'm a man, right? I have my wife. We do what we do. I send, I breathe forth, I send my fluids into her. That's not, it was me, but it's not me, if that makes sense. So Allah breathed forth. It stood 7 spirits for his face. So he breathed forth, and then 7 spirits for his face. So this is the separation right there. These are not one and the same. These came from this, these came from, but from didn't come from these, if that makes sense. So the Hebrews call these 7 spirits Elohim. And these are they who, in their boundless power, create everything that is or was. Now, continue on. I'm going to give y'all a little bit more understanding on why Elohim isn't a law. Prophet himself said, who is Elohim? In our questionnaire that he gave us to help us with the Holy Crown of More Science to America. He said, who is Elohim? And the prophet said, Elohim is the 7 spirits, the seven created spirits that create everything that ever was, is, evermore to be. Okay, cool. Praise Allah. Then the next question, prophet says, what is Elohim sometimes called? The 7 eyes of Allah. So that right there alone lets you know that Elohim is not Allah. Elohim is a part of Allah, but Elohim is not all of Allah. Because look, would you say, if I pull my eyeballs out, right? If I pull my eyeballs out and set them on this table, would you say that those eyeballs are me? You wouldn't. You know, being realistic, logic, you wouldn't. You would say those are a part of me, but you wouldn't say, oh, where's Brother J? Where's Brother J at? And the only thing right here sitting on this table is my eyeballs, and I'm in a whole nother state. Would you go and say, oh, he right here, and come and point at my eyeballs? You wouldn't. You wouldn't do that. So, like, it's simple. The prophet gave it to us so simple, you know. But, you know, it's often, you know, things get twisted up, things get mixed, teachings get mixed, and, you know, causes confusion. But prophet also said, if I could get you to think, you could save yourself. And, you know, somebody else told me that Allah is Elohim, you know, and that's what the prophet explained to us. He said, hey, just because the priest say so, or sheik or somebody or some religious person up in your organization says something, doesn't necessarily mean it's true. You know, go find out yourself. Use your own mind. Use your own logic. What makes sense? Another thing, these pencils, right? Okay, for all intents and purpose, say I breathe forth, you know, and I make this pencil. I make 7 pencils. Now I could write down whatever I want with this pencil, you know. That's the creative. You know, that's the creative. So if anything, Elohim is just a tool that Allah used to create the world, to create everything that we know. And that's just for us to understand, to help us understand Allah. Remember, we cannot circumscribe Allah. No, we can't put and say Allah is just this. You know, we can't do that. Allah is the force that allowed Elohim to even be creative. Prophet continues on, he said, these spirits of the triune Allah moved on the face of boundless space, and 7 ethers were, and every ether had its form of life. So these created ethers. So it's like, again, like if I wrote something down with this pencil and it was red ink, if I wrote something down with a pencil and it had blue ink, purple ink, yellow ink, orange ink, these different like ethers, for simplicity. Each its own color, each having its own properties, etc. And the prophet goes on and he says, these forms of life are but the thought of Allah, clothed in the substance of the ether planes. So Allah thought about the beasts, etc. And this is what they look like. This is what the beasts look like. This is their native plane. This is what they're clothed with. This is their substance. This is what makes them. This is their DNA, stuff like that. This is their molecules, their atoms, things that compose them. Prophet said, men call these ether planes the planes of protoplast, of earth, of plant, of beast, of man, of angel, and cherubim. So protoplast, again, is like a single cell organism. Earth, that's the dirt, minerals, gold, silver, lead, aluminum, like coal, like all these different things is earth. They all minerals type stuff, elements. Then the prophet said of plant, that's a sunflower plant. That's a watermelon. That's lettuce. That's a tree. That's all these. That's seaweed. That's even marijuana. Like that's a plant. Like all these is plants. A plant is a plant. You're not gonna mistake a man for a plant. Like you're just not gonna do that. It's some animals that mimic how plants look, but you still not gonna mistake a plant. Like pretty much all animals, you're gonna see them breathe. You're gonna see an animal breathe. Pretty much every animal. I'm pretty sure every animal, if you got a good enough microscope, you will see it breathe somehow. Like the shark gills, them gills be moving. That's them breathing. Like, I gotta go and inspect the ant. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, if I had a fine enough tool, you probably will see something on the ant that signifies it's breathing. You go look at a plant, I think they got the stomas or something, like them things open and close, maybe. But like a plant don't breathe in and out. Like it don't got, like it do that, but it don't gotta like physically move to do that, if that makes sense. Like nothing on this, not that I know of. Then you got, like I said, a beast. A beast, that's everything. That's cats, dogs, birds, worms, scorpions, snakes, alligators, crocodiles, dinosaurs. That's the beast. Elephants, rhinoceroses, tigers, lions, bears, all them are beasts. Of man, you know what man is. You got various types. You got Asiatics, you got Europeans, and then amongst the Asiatics and Europeans, you got all these various we all one family, but like me, I'm Moorish, then you got Egyptians, you got Arabians, you got Turks, you got Japanese, you got Chinese, you got Indians, you got all the different Native American tribes. You got in Europe, you got Germans, you got Britons, you got Russians, all these different types of humanity. But we all one family still though. Cause we all got two eyes, we all got a nose right here, we all got ears right here, we all got two hands, we all got 2 feet, we all got 2 arms, we all got 2 legs, we all got 1 head, we all got 1 neck, we all got 1 heart, we all got 2 lungs, we all got small intestine, large intestine. If you're a man, you got what you got down there. You're a woman, you got what you got down there. Look, all the same. Don't matter the skin tone. Like, it's all the same. Like, the functionality of it is all the same. And then you got of angel and cherubim. So you got angels and you got cherubim. Now, there's a deeper understanding, like there's an understanding of what an angel is and what a cherubim is. An angel can take human form, so you may be talking to a person and they might not be man at all. They might be an angel, they look like a man or they look like a woman, but really they an angel, and I'm pretty sure y'all had experiences where y'all seen somebody and they gave you a message or they stopped you from doing something or they gave you something and you never seen them again. Never seen them again. That's happened to me a few times. There's one time I was working at a restaurant. I was younger. There's this older person and they came up to me, and they were talking about, they grew up during the Great Depression, all the stuff they had. And they just helped me learn how to be grateful. I never seen them again. Then another time I was at the park playing and I was young, probably about 10 years old or something. And there was some Asiatic brothers, they was working out, doing the dips, the push-ups, pull-ups. And for whatever reason, I walked up over there. I don't know. Like, I wanted to see what they was doing or something. And they was like, yeah, we doing this. And they had a deck of cards. They flipped the deck of cards, said, hey, come on, let's get in. So I joined in on their workout. They was sitting there flipping deck of cards. And I'm sitting there doing the dips or doing the push-ups, the number of cards, And that helped me how to learn how to work out. That put some to learn to appreciate fitness, like up in my life, being in shape, being muscular. And from that point on, I knew, to work out and to be in shape. I never seen them brothers again up after that. I consider, occurrences like that, you came across an angel, That's why I consider that. Then the cherubim, the cherubim, it's a lot of understanding on cherubim, so I'm not going to get too deep on that. But you could think of like the stars almost, kind of like cherubim, like guiding stars and stuff like that. Then the prophet said, these planes with all the team of thoughts of Allah are never seen by eyes of man in flesh. They are composed of substance far too fine fleshy eyes see, and still they constitute the soul of things. So he let us know all these different planes all got little certain special aspects that Allah put within them. And that's why you can't like mix, earth and man. You like can't do that. That's like science fiction type stuff, It won't naturally occur, like it don't happen. Same thing with like plants and animals, like you don't see plant animal hybrids, like stuff like that. Like it don't work, It may be like a little short-term little thing. Like I seen where somebody tried to put a pig heart like in a man or something, but like them cells though don't mix like that. Like it don't mix. And that's prophet saying, team of thoughts of Allah are never seen by eyes of men in flesh. They are composed of substance far too fine flesh eyes see. And that's even true. You think about we gotta have a microscope, all these other things to really see, deep down. You think about the time the prophet said this, they probably had microscopes back then, for sure. Like a little fine crystal, for sure. They could, ain't nothing new under the sun. And it's still, things that we can't see with a microscope. There's certain things you won't see. Even if you got the highest grade microscope, you still won't see it within cells. That's what the prophet's talking about. It says, if the eyes of soul, all creatures see these are the planes and all the forms of life. And that's kind of like in your dreams, the eyes of soul. You could see like a dog or a cat or another person or trees or earth. You can see all that up on the soul plane, even though you're not using your physical eyes. Prophet said, because all forms of life on every plane are thoughts of Allah, all creatures think, and every creature possesses the will in this measure has the power to choose. Now the prophet is saying creatures. And when he says creatures, he's referring to the beast and he's referring to the man. These are creatures. Like We're not like creatures like that, but like that's what he's referring to. Your dog got a choice. Dog can choose to listen to you, it could choose to not listen to you. A shark could choose to bite you or could not choose to bite you. And this measure has the power to choose. Now this is the key, because a shark can't choose to be a vegetarian. A shark can't choose to be a vegan. It just can't do it. It's not gonna eat. If you try to keep a shark in captivity and only feed it lettuce, that shark is gonna end up dying. It's not gonna eat that lettuce. No matter how hungry it gets, it's never gonna make the choice to eat the lettuce. Now, man, on the other hand, we can choose what we want to eat. Same thing, we could choose. And that's what the prophet said, and in its measure has the power to choose. In its measure. Our measure is pretty much unmeasurable except by Allah. That's the only thing that can measure us is Allah. Other people may even try to measure you, but they can't measure you. The only thing that can measure us is Allah. So in our measure, we got the power to choose. And the prophet said, and so it was with every living thing until the will became a sluggish will, and then the ethers of the protoplast, the earth, the plant, the beast, the man began to vibrate very slow. So the will became sluggish. You think about that. When you get sleepy, when you get tired, you slow down. And that's like what the prophet is saying here, the will became sluggish. What will became sluggish? Man's will. Our will became sluggish. We stopped wanting to have all that responsibility of keeping everything in order underneath Allah. For some reason, we didn't want that no more. Something had happened and made us not want it. And you see that every day in your life, It'd be days where, I'm working to be on a calorie deficit. Be some days my will is sluggish. I'm like, dang. And I might overeat on some calories, That's simple life example. Take it and apply it to your life however you see fit. With whatever thing that you done went through. And then you can see how the will became a sluggish will. But you don't have to stay like that though. If I choose to, forget it, I'm just not going to worry about being in a calorie deficit no more. That's a choice. I'm not choosing to do that. Allah willing. And my will willing. And so it was. And then the prophet says, the ethers became more dense, and all the creatures of these plains were clothed with coarser garbs of flesh, which men can see, and thus the coarser manifest, which men call physical, appeared. Now think about that too. With water. You got water, you freezing. You slowing it down. It hardens. Becomes one solid mass. Becomes ice. Right? But if you heat it up, it bubbles. It becomes vapors. So fine that you can't even see it no more. And that's how you could think about the ethers becoming more dense. As the speed got lower, things started solidifying, started becoming more visible. Like Prophet said, plains were clothed with coarser garbs of flesh. You think about in your dreams, that's not coarser garbs of flesh that you be seeing up in your dreams. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's like real, like, I don't want to say thin, but it's like sublime. But here on this earth plane, as you get slower and slower, you become less and less sublime. Praise be to Allah. Prophet said, man, which man called physical, appeared. And this is what is called the fall of man. But man fell not alone, for protoplasm and earth and plant and beast were all included in the fall. So as your vibration gets slower, you become slower, you don't react as fast, etc. And Prophet continues on, he says, the angels and the cherubim failed not, their will were never strong, and so they held the ethers of the plains in harmony with Allah. So they didn't want to get away from Allah. And praise be Allah for that. I wish we'd have been like the angels and cherubim. And we had a strong will strong enough that we could say, the angels, it wasn't in their measure to choose not to be of Allah. But within us, spirit man, being creators up underneath Allah, we had a strong enough will that we could be like, I don't want to listen to Allah. Go through that today. You could get a sign from Allah to do this, but you don't have to do it. But you will have to deal with the consequences of not doing what Allah sent or told you to do. Your consciousness, your divine consciousness. Prophet continues on, he said, now when the ether reached the rate of atmosphere, and all the creatures of these planes must get the food from atmosphere, the conflict came. And then that which finite man called survival the best became a law. So when everything slowed down and reached the rate of heaviness, you go outside some days and you feel just a heaviness. That's the rate of atmosphere. That's the common laws, like gravity. Like you could think of gravity as the rate of atmosphere. Like the birds gotta respect gravity. Man gotta respect gravity. The plants respect gravity. Earth respect gravity. The water respect gravity. That's like that rate of atmosphere. It's like it's a constant. You have variables and then you have constants. The rate of atmosphere is a constant. Everything is subject to it. And it said, then that which finite man called survival the best became a law, aka survival the fittest, etc. And that became a law because at that point, we weren't getting the finer nourishment from our ether planes no more because we had slowed down that much. We had got we had got that solidified. Like if I have a bottle of water and I put a drop of ink in here, and this is liquid water, that drop of ink is gonna go through all this, right? It's gonna make the water be whatever color that ink is. But if I freeze this water and then I put the drop of ink on there, it's just gonna sit on the top of that ice until it melts. So you could use that to help you get some understanding of what it means when the ether reached the rate of atmosphere and all the creatures of these planes must get their food from atmosphere, the conflict came, and then that which finite man called survival the best became a law. Because before that happened, we was getting just the nourishment from Allah down, and it would get into us. And we would be nourished. Just like if I drop some ink into water, that ink will fill up that whole water. But as our vibration slowed down and we became more ice, more solid, that drop Allah sent, wow, it hit the ice. It don't permeate through no more because we came so slow and solid. People say, oh, why you so dense? And they calling you slow. You know what I'm saying? Like, think about that. Prophet said, the stronger ate the bodies of the weaker manifest, and here's where the carnal evolution had us rise. So, stronger ate the bodies of the weaker manifest. This is just simple as that. And then Prophet said, and now man, it is utter shamelessness, strikes down and eats the beast consume the plant thrives on the earth soars for the blast. Now again, this is another thing. Well, I'll continue on. Prophet said, yonder kingdom of the soul, this carnal evolution is not known. And a great work of masterminds to restore the heritage of man to bring him back to his estate that he had lost, which he again will live upon the ethers of his native plane. And again, this is how I understand the prophet calling us to be vegetarians. Because he said, and now man, in his utter shamelessness, that is not a compliment. That is not a compliment. Utter shamelessness. That's like, this person is shameless. Shamelessness. Like they have no shame. Like, that's not a compliment. It's never been a compliment. No, not a compliment. So the prophet saying, in shamelessness, we strike down and eat the beast. He's saying it's a shame to do that. You shouldn't do that, according to the prophet Jesus. And then in the previous chapter that we read, chapter 10, Jesus spake on the unity of Allah and man to the Hindus. The prophet said, now men and birds and beasts and creeping things are deities made flesh, and how dare you kill anything? So he said, now men and birds and beasts and creeping things are deities made flesh, and how dare you kill anything? It is cruelty that makes the world awry. Men have learned that when they harm a living thing, they harm themselves. They surely not kill nor cause a thing that Allah has made to suffer pain. And the prophet then says in the previous, the next chapter up after that, he said, and now man, it is utter shamelessness, strikes down and eats the beast. And then he continues on and says, in yonder kingdom of soul, this carnal evolution is not known. And the great work of masterminds is to restore the heritage of man, to bring him back to his estate that he had lost, when he again will live upon the ethers of his native plane. So if that don't call you to be a vegetarian according to Jesus and the Holy Crown of More Science to America, I do not know what will. Up at that point, you just in utter shamelessness. And hey, like Prophet Muhammad said, I'm just a messenger, man. Don't get mad at me. I'm not trying to change your life. That's Jesus. You want to be mad at somebody, be mad at Jesus. Be mad at Allah. Don't be mad at me. Don't say I'm trying to change you and make you think like I think or eat like I eat. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just telling you what I learned. No. And if man want to be ignorant, so be it. But this light that I got, I'm going to let it shine in. But the prophet let me know. He said, the great work of mastermind restore the heritage of man to bring him back to his estate. So to me, prophet wants us to start limiting that, He don't want us to eat the beast. If we got to eat anything, eat the plant. Because the plant isn't like a living thing like that. Like we spoke about earlier, the plant does not breathe in and out. The plant does not suffer pain. If you cut a plant, some people say, that they give off signals and all this other stuff. And they may be true. That might be true. So even then, look, we got to go even higher. And that's where our minds really have to become fully activated to understand. When we starting to get the technology to where we could synthesize proteins, carbohydrates, fats, all these things and not hurt nothing in doing it. Now it has to come from a clean source. If we could get sunflower oil, we could get sunflower protein, we get pea protein, we get tofu protein, bean protein, and synthesize that all into one super protein and propagate it, and only have to do that one time synthesize. Because look, if you know who Henrietta Lacks is, you know that what I'm talking about is completely possible. Because Henrietta Lacks, she has some type of cancer and her cells never died. And they use her cells to this day. And she passed away a while ago. But they preserved her cells. And now almost every certain type of cell or something in some type of research is one of her cells. Because they propagated that line. So I'm not, that's just the transition, Like you think about in sci-fi movies. They just pop a pill, they take a pill and they got all their nutrients in that they need. Like that's some, I could get behind. Not trying to sound like a sci-fi, whatever, but because the prophet, he says it's our responsibility. But because he says the beast consume the plant thrives on the earth absorbs protoplasm. So each thing is eating like the other thing, kind of like man eats the beast eat the plant eats the earth eats the protoplasm. And the prophet saying, none of them should be eating something else. We should all just be getting that nutrient from Allah. And that's the work of masterminds, that we got to understand how to get there. Process. And like I said, the way that I said is a way to get there, If we could synthesize, things from a vegan source, even somehow figure out how to make it in the lab, but, not on no weird, stuff. Get there. Because he says, when he again will live upon the ethers of his native plane. So again, back to the water analogy. Think of us, our native plane is liquid water. And Allah could drop in nutrients to us, and that would go through our whole being. But as our vibes slowed down, we became hard and solid. So then when Allah would drop, our nutrients to feed us, it would hit the solid ice and it wouldn't feed us. And that's what's going on now. So what I'm saying, you got to speed up your vibration. One of the best ways to speed up your vibration is to stop eating animal flesh. Because if you think about this, strikes down and eats the beast. So boom, once you stop striking down and eating the beast, you're one step closer. Okay, so then you consume the plant, right? And that's where we at. But then the next thing, the earth. Think about what earth is. It's minerals. Your body need all the vitamins and minerals. And where do these vitamins and minerals come from? They come from the earth. They come from the plants. So boom, you figure out how to synthesize that. You remove that. And then boom, man, it's sustaining on earth. It's crazy that sound. No, but it's really saying you just sustaining on vitamins and minerals. And boom, you eliminate that. And then you get into the protoplasm, And that's where it get really deep. So that's a deep understanding that I'm going to continue to thrive and do more research on. And we'll be back in this chapter. And by then, I'll definitely have some more information for you all about that, because just not continue on no further with this, but like with the algae, there's a lot of studies coming out too with the algae, and algae are protoplasm, and talk about the health benefits of, algae, but it's a certain type of algae that occur, and just, that's what we can be, that strong, you think about Dragon Ball Z, a sensu bean, it's just one little thing that they eat and then boom, they fully recover. How efficient that is for the rest of the world, how much pain that's limiting for the rest of the world. Because say, hey, plants do suffer pain somehow. Say we figure that out for sure. Then it's on me figure out, okay, I don't want to be causing plants no pain, according to Jesus. So what's the next step? How can I figure out how to get past that? Everything we do go higher and higher, and it's a challenge. But you don't run away from challenge. Challenge makes you better. Prophet says, the thoughts of Allah change not. The manifested life of every plane unfolds in the perfection of the kind. And as the thought of Allah can never die, there is not death to any being of the seven spirits, seven ethers of the seven spirits, Trin Allah. So the Prophet is bringing it all together and even giving us evolution, because he says, unfolds into perfection of the kind. So the dog is going to keep on unfolding and becoming a more perfected version of the dog. The cat is going to keep on unfolding and become a more perfected version of the cat. The sunflower is going to keep on unfolding and becoming a more perfection version of the sunflower. Man is going to keep on unfolding and become a more perfected form of himself. But this all takes work. We all have to put in the work. We can't just sit there and say it's going to happen, or think that we don't have to change our ways in order for it to happen. No, we have to do what we need to do. If I want to be able to bench 400 pounds and I don't ever go to the gym and work on a bench press, guess what? I'm not going to bench 400 pounds. Even if you want to be one of those quote unquote people, or advocate. Oh, well, what if a person just sits on their couch all day and takes steroids? Okay. They still might not even be able to bench 400 pounds. You know, all I'm saying, got to get up and do. When we reading these, we got to take what the prophet give us. We got to get up and implement it into our lives. So that we could continue to unfold in the perfection that we're supposed to be. There's a perfect form in you. You can see it in your mind. You can feel it in your spirit. You can feel it in your soul. That perfect form of you. You got to do what you need to do to reach that perfect form of you. You can't just sit there and think and not do nothing for it. You have to do what you need to do for it to be. If it's not drinking, if it's not smoking, if it's not watching different type of medias, if it's not if you want to be more in shape, you know, you got to go to the gym. You got to go on walks. You got to watch what you eat. If you want to be more smarter, per se, you got to study. You got to read. You got to do these things. You just can't sit there and think that it's going to happen. You can't just sit there and just use, like we got ChatGPT now. ChatGPT, I could ask ChatGPT for the best workout plan in the world. And it will give me a real good workout plan. But guess what? I got to get up and do the workout plan still. ChatGPT not going to do the workout plan for me. Like, still got to implement it. Still got to do what you got to do to become perfected. To reach that perfected version of you. You can do it. Prophet said, there's not death to any being of the seven ethers, or seven spirits, or tree one law. So when things go extinct, you know, that's not permanent death. You know, that's just step. You know, there's no death to any being of the seven. Because, like, just one thing, like, one form of the beast goes extinct, the beast is still roaming. They still going. And that's always. Or a certain type of plant goes extinct, you know, it's still going on. The plant in general, like the plant ether in general. Said, and so on earth is never a plant, a beast or bird, a creeping thing is never man, and man is not and cannot be a beast or bird, a creeping thing. There's nowhere in the fossil records where we see, oh, this plant evolved into, or this plant became a reptile. It's nowhere in the fossil records we see that. We see people talk about man, right? Coming from monkeys and coming this type of homo, and then Neanderthal. But guess what? There's still a quote unquote missing link from us as humans and from the monkeys. There's a missing link there. That's because we didn't come from monkeys. You know, some of us interbred with Neanderthals, and we see this today in certain types of people who portray and act like that. But we didn't come from monkeys. None of humanity came from monkeys. We all came from Adam and Eve. And Adam and Eve, we went out into the world. And as we went out into the world, we did come across these other humanoid type things. And some of us gave in to our lower self and intermingled, amalgamated with the Neanderthals. And that's why certain people got more tendencies to be like Neanderthals. Now, that's that. You know, you won't find the missing link. There is no missing link. There is no link. That's why it's missing. That's why it's never been found. That's why it never will be found. There is no Neanderthal evolved in a man. That does not exist. Man came onto the earth plane, and man then some of us went into a Neanderthal and then caused the Neanderthal DNA to get mixed in with our DNA. But our DNA is still the dominant DNA. So yeah, man is not and cannot be a beast, a bird, a creeper thing, and then no beast evolve into being a man. Man did some nasty stuff and intermingled with a beast. But yeah, then no beast evolving to become a man. And then no element. Lead never, there is no lead plant. Like no plant evolved from lead. Like you won't find these things in the fossil record. They don't exist. But you will see evolution within the different ether planes. You will see where a snake evolved into this type of snake. You will see a reptile evolved into this type of reptile. You'll even see the dinosaurs. You know, the dinosaurs. Birds evolved from dinosaurs, believe it or not. And yeah, reptiles and birds and snakes, yeah, they do all, some of them do have a common link. You know, you look at the evolutionary and you could track that. You will see their fossil records. You can track that. And that's fine. They evolved into perfection of their own kind. You know, when this type of snake couldn't do what it needed to do under the rate of atmosphere that it was in, it evolved into another type of snake. Same thing with the monkeys, the sharks. That's the mastery, the high science of the prophet. He don't disregard evolution. He don't say, oh, evolution isn't a thing. He just says that man did not evolve from a monkey. That's what the prophet says. Praise be to Allah. But he didn't say that the monkeys didn't experience evolution. He didn't say that the plants didn't experience evolution. He said everything. He says, the thoughts of Allah change not. The manifest of life on every plane unfolds in the perfection of the kind. So when that type of dog couldn't be perfected no more, it evolved. And that's perfection, evolution. You know, you think I'm evolving and I'm becoming a better person. You're essentially saying you're perfecting yourself. I evolved. I don't do that anymore. You're perfecting yourself. Praise be to Allah. The Prophet says, the time will come when all these manifests will be absorbed, and man and beast and plant and earth and protoplasm will be redeemed. And that's, you know, once we all, you know, as man continues on, we'll all be redeemed. You know, we won't be eating on each other, essentially. Don't be preying on each other. You know, Prophet talk about the lion and the lamb may lay down together and none will be harmed when morning came. Why? Because they're both getting fed from Allah. They don't need to eat each other. And that's humanity too. It's going to come a time when we getting fed from Allah, we feeding ourselves, and we don't need to feed on each other. I don't need to prey on this person to get money from them. I don't need to prey on this person to get sexual satisfaction from them, etc. You know, all these things man will stop doing. But he has to put in the work to stop doing it. He has to be taught how to stop doing it. Because there was a time when we weren't doing it. But our will got sluggish. And we got slower. We got more solid. We got more dense. So we started falling victim to these things. Letting ourselves fall victim to what our flesh wanted. Instead of being masters of our flesh, the flesh became masters of us. But mastermind, no. I'm the master, the mind and the flesh. The flesh and the mind is not the master over me. I am the master over that. And that's the proper flow. The Prophet said, well, then it continues on and said, Barata was amazed. The wisdom of the Jewish sage was revelation unto him. So he was amazed. He was happy, you know, it was revelation. Then Vita Padi, wise Indian sages, chief of the temple Kapavistu, heard Barata speak Jesus, the origin man, heard the answer to the Hebrew prophet, and he said, so the chief of the temple, the wisest, he heard this conversation. And he said, "You priests Capavistu, hear me speak. We stand today upon the crest of time. 6 time ago, a master soul was born who gave glorious light to men. And now a master sage stands in the temple of Capavistu." He's talking about how previously Buddha, a master soul, was born who gave a glorious light to man. Talking about Buddha and his wisdom. So he gave honors to Buddha. And then he says, and now a master sage stands in the temple of Capavistu. So he said, and now another master soul is here, talking about Jesus. And he said, the Hebrew prophet is rising star of wisdom defied. He brings to us a knowledge of the secret things of Allah, and all the world will hear his word and glorify his name. So he letting them know what Jesus was about. He said, the Hebrew prophet is rising star of wisdom. You hear about, I watch sports and stuff. They be like, oh, his draft stock is rising, oh, this and that. He becoming a superstar, and that's what we talking about Jesus here. He's the rising star of wisdom, They see his wisdom constantly climbing. His understanding that him and Allah is one, constantly climbing. It's not, oh, I kind of think it, oh, nope, not true. Oh, I kind of think it, oh, nope, not true. No, Jesus said, no, okay, I hear and bow. I'm staying up on it. I'm staying up on it. I'm staying up on it. The rising star of wisdom. Talking about he brings to us a knowledge of the secret things of Allah. And Jesus, since he was known that him and Allah was one, he wasn't eating animal flesh. He was meditating, getting his nourishment from Allah when he could. He was able to bring them secret messages of Allah. It's like if your frequency is not tuned on the right thing, you will not hear the message. If your vibe is not on the right frequency, you will not hear the message. If Allah's vibe is on 1.5 and you on 0.7 or 10.9, you are not going to hear what Allah has to say until you put your tune on Allah's tune. Till you match them, you ain't going to hear. And that's what Jesus was doing. So when he was matching, he's able to get that secret knowledge to bring it back to the people and say all the world will hear his word and glorify his name. And people speak highly of Jesus to this day. I give honors to Jesus. That's my brother, man. Praise be to Allah. He a divine prophet. Yes. Praise be to Allah for sending our brother Jesus, glorifying Jesus' name. I thank Allah for sending Jesus, for teaching us, for teaching me to be a vegetarian, for telling me how to get my vibration faster, so I could be more sublime. That's what sublime is, being faster. You notice before somebody even notice you. You get quick head nod. Hey, dang. Don't be mad at me, bro. I gave you acknowledgement. Don't act like you didn't see me give you acknowledgement or whatever. And if you beat me to it, hey, praise be to Allah. That's, it's that simple, But people, we got to keep on rising up higher and higher. Praise be to Allah. And it said, you priests of Temple Capavistu, stay, be still, and listen when he speaks. He is a living oracle of Allah. So Vidiyapati is saying, he the living oracle of Allah. Allah's words is coming to him. And then he continues on. And then it said, and all the priests gave thanks and praised the Buddha of enlightenment. And that word of praise, that one kind of always stuck to me a little bit. But that let me know too that even high religious people make mistakes, because they gave praise to the Buddha of enlightenment. If they gave praise to Jesus, they shouldn't have did that. They should have gave praise to Allah and gave honors to Jesus. But praise be to Allah and honors to Jesus. Honors to each and every one of you. Honors to Prophet Ali. Honors Muhammad. Honors Buddha. Honors Confucius. Honors to everybody that's working on the uplifting and falling humanity, regardless of your quote-unquote religion, regardless of your quote-unquote race, regardless of your quote-unquote ethnicity, regardless of your quote-unquote culture, regardless of your economic status, anything. If you're working on the uplifting of fallen humanity, using the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, I give you honors, and I praise Allah for sending you to continue on with the good work. Praise be to Allah. And again, praise Allah. I appreciate y'all. And continue, tuning in. I know this video is a little bit longer, but this chapter right here, this is like one of the longest chapters in the Holy Crown of More Science to America. It's about half a page, and 3/4 a page. So it's about, if you say half a page, it's about two and 1/4 a page, maybe, or something like that. So yeah, this is one of the longest chapters in the Holy Crown of More Science to America. So it's a lot in there. So this video was a little bit longer, but I got a lot of work to catch up on my shorts. This is chapter 11. I think right now I got shorts up to chapter 5, maybe. I just made a short for chapter 5, so I'll continue on, doing that, and eventually I will be caught up. So then at that point, I'll read the chapters of the week. I'll do my 3 chapters of the week, and then I'll be able to give y'all the shorts for those chapters right on time. Right now, because of how I did it, I got to catch up on my shorts to the chapter. Right now, like I said, we on chapter 11, gonna be on chapter 12 tomorrow. But right now, I only got shorts up to chapter 4 for chapter 5. And I know y'all like them shorts because y'all get the message. You don't have to be a whole hour and 20, but hey, I like to, I like when I work, I like to turn on, educational program and listen to it, and that's kind of like what I'm trying to do here, give people, something they could listen to, because it's just me talking, you don't have to be looking at the screen in order to get this message. I'm not posting nothing, I'll show, occasionally the Holy Crown of More Science to America, you'll see my facial expressions, my hand movements, stuff like that. But, there's no infographics popping up. There's no, this ain't no movie type stuff. And, everything you could hear me say. So that's what I do think is an advantage to this format. And again, praise Allah. Honors y'all. Y'all have a good rest of y'all night. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. Praise be Allah. Love to y'all. Peace.